So you may have noticed there has been a ton of change at the White House recently. The building just behind me here, there are a lot of acting secretaries, acting cabinet members inside Donald Trump's administration. So why is that? Why does the president have so many of these officials who are in an acting capacity? Part of the reason is he simply likes it. President Trump has talked about this.
But I sort of like acting. Gives me more flexibility. Do you understand that? I like acting.
Yes, this is a president who has broken a lot of norms, but believe it or not, this acting thing is not one of them. He does not even hold the record for the most days in a year on average with acting cabinet heads, at least one of them. That record actually belongs to Barack Obama, the former president, back in 2013. In 2007, you had a headline in the New York Times that could have been ripped straight from the pages of Today that said interim chiefs increasingly running federal agencies. That was from former President Bush, so this is not necessarily a new thing. That said, it does raise some concerns, right? There is some question about how long you can really have an acting head in place, and more importantly, how long you should have an acting head in place. You've seen people raise some worries about this. For example, Justice Thomas has talked about this a little bit. Still, it is the president's prerogative to do this if he wants to, and there's not a lot of sign that that's going to change anytime soon, not just at the Department of Homeland Security, but at a bunch of different federal agencies. What does that tell us about the potential for more turnover later in the administration? So here's kind of an interesting statistic for you. When you have administrations that have a lot of turnover sort of early on and throughout the administration, the last year of the presidency sees that number spike or get higher. Based on that, whenever Donald Trump's presidency ends, whenever that final year may be, it's probably safe to say you can expect to see a pretty good rate of turnover then, too.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.